your vision for even the first season still was to actually keep that going and reveal him as that later.
No, I would say things. I mean, that was the pilot.
That was the beginning.
Yeah,
okay.
Things changed greatly when they wanted things to be lighter, and once they started recasting, they were like, well, we could recast Joseph, and then the idea to make a younger, that kind of came from CBS wanting a younger show, more youth-oriented show, and which I would have been like, I would have fought, except that it kind of sounded interesting to me. The only thing I was worried about was having a young vampire that did an actor who couldn't convey the weight of somebody who had lived that long. I was worried that if he appeared to be young, he would seem young. But I mean, Jason was fantastic, so it all worked out.
Yes, he was.
But that was the basic. They wanted a younger show. I liked the idea of a young guy who was very old, and so we went. And but when the character changed, we just went with it. He was more of a friend, not quite as much of a mentor, but somebody who still was more amoral than Mick, and had a different outlook and view, and I was interested in exploring that.
Well, along those same lines, one of the things that carries the show is their friendship.
Yeah.
They're polar opposites.
Right.
What like Joseph can't stand that Mick hates being a vampire.
Right.
Mick, who hates being a vampire, likes Jason, who embraces it. Was there ever any thought to go back to show how these two did become such good friends?
Yeah. Well, I mean, initially,
with the glue that held them.
Initially, I mean, I don't know specifically. We didn't come up with that story, but I mean, the idea for Ron and I was that we would do that. We wanted to find out how Joseph became a vampire. And somehow something from his past comes into the present, and we reveal something like that, and how Mick and Joseph became friends. I mean, those were the stories that I really wanted to tell week to week. I'm not interested in the crime of the week. I mean, I want that to be fun and exciting. Sure, it's just an engine to find out more about the characters.
Exactly.
So.
Well, a lot of people said with Lola's character that the question was whether or not she's the one that turned him,
right.
Because there was such a bond between the two of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, and some I mean, some of the things, there are a lot of ideas flying around in a writer's room, and so you set certain things up that you can do potentially. That certainly came up, but it wasn't decided upon. It's the kind of thing that if you want to do that down the line, it seems like a story that you want to work in. We have to be very careful, because once you do something, you can't undo it. So you set things. That's why sometimes I think in shows you're like, well, I remember this thing seemed to be set up as if it was going in a certain direction. Well, yeah, but something they decided to do something different.
I have one more question. I have to jump in. I should say when, because I'm crossing my fingers for you. When you are able to continue and write more, continue the series basically in book form, how will you write it? Will you write it as you originally wrote it?
I'll write it as I originally wrote it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there, potential there may be. I've heard that Joss did a whole season of Moonlight in comic books and graphic novel, and I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I have to do. I would want to retain my vision for the novels I wrote. But if there were some sort of life, in terms of a movie or a miniseries or a graphic novel, and I was involved in that, then I would write in the vein of the show.
Okay, you write in the vein of the show.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. Because I really want to see where you want to take it.
Right. Well, that would be ideal to get to do that. To get to do both would be fantastic.
I was going to ask, at the beginning of the series, fans were fascinated over Mick's ring.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that was in your original novel.
No.
Where you picked it out. But do you know what happened to that ring? Did he keep it, or?
I don't know for sure, but I suspect he probably did.
That ring is famous.
Yeah. He picked it out of a bunch. He wanted. I mean, that was one of the things we talked about when Alex. I mean, it's very collaborative in general. You collaborate with the new writers you bring in. You collaborate with the directors, and you collaborate with the actors. And one of the things he was excited about was having a piece that there was some mystique to, that maybe we could build a story around at some point. And, again, going back to the past and trying to reveal something. Yeah.
So you could have done a whodunit in the past.
Right. Yeah. How to get the ring?
I had a question for you. The character Simone, that was kind of in Joseph's love interest, was that, if they
I mean, Simone was not my idea, but Sarah was, and you know, we did like the idea of having her come back at some point. I mean, you know, if we were going to be able to keep doing the backstory and keep revealing, you know, we would like to have brought that back. And certainly, if Simone existed, then we would have had to have some sort of.
She wasn't in your novel, though.
Who's that?
Simone wasn't in your novel.
No.
No. Okay. I wondered about that, but I was hoping that Sarah would come back, so I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, that was the Sleeping Beauty was something. You know, we felt like we'd gotten away. So you know, they kept pressuring for the standalone. So when Ron and I went to write that one, we're like, we're just gonna write what we want.
Did you write it?
Well,
Yeah, Ron and I wrote
I
Sleeping.
was throwing things at the TV at the end of that episode when.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Oh God, yeah. But see, that was the first time that, for me, I don't know for everybody else, but for the character Joseph, I ever felt compassion for
Right.
him.
Which I mean, you know, again goes to, you know, you think you understand Joseph, right? He
And then you
sees
see
this
that.
callous jerk, and then you see there's something more to him. That was
That's
the whole
exactly.
thing.
And that for me, then after that.
A lot of us fell in love with Joseph at that moment.
Is that right? That's interesting. Yeah. Well, that was the goal, you know, to give, you know, I'm very interested in. You think you understand? So I think people are like that, you know. It's like, oh, this guy's such a jerk, you know, and then you find out, oh, he's a jerk because of these reasons, or you know, he's had these experiences.
He doesn't know the show got canceled, and I talked to people and actually got offended and seriously pissed off when they find out the show was canceled.
Yeah, people still are. I was just traveling in Europe, and we ran into this family from Jersey, and we were just talking because we hadn't talked with anybody who spoke English in, you know, like a couple weeks, and we're chatting with them, and then, you know, we saw them one day, and we were talking about, you know, Italy, and then the next day we were talking, then we started talking about, you know, who does what, or you know, what do you do for a living, and I told them they were aware of the show, and they're like, really, you know, that's great, and then they found out it was canceled through me, you know. That's good.
Yeah, but you know, it was huge in London, in England,
Yeah.
and Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, a solid fan base here, 7.5 million or whatever,
Right.
by our standards is small.
Right.
But I mean, it was a huge hit in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
Okay, I got another. In the first 12, which a lot of us separate the first 12 and the last 4, it's not a whole season, it was a 12 and a 4. Because a lot of us like the last 4, they definitely had a very different feel than the first 12. In the first 12, Mick and Beth couldn't seem to get it together. It was totally star-crossed lovers. And in the last 4, it became a very different feel. If you had kept going and had input in the last 4 and in another season, if that be the case, where would that have gone for you? I mean, what was your vision for their relationship?
Well, you know, I guess I think the kiss of death is when the characters just start dating. You know, I mean, that's boring to me. I would not have done that. I would not have done that. You know, I mean, I think what's interesting is the tension. You put them together. You know, you have moments where they are close together, and you tear them apart. You know, and that's you I think, you know, that sustains the, you know, the relationship longer. You know, we did a lot of things very quickly, you know, out of the gate, and I think at some point, you know, that we paid a price. It was interesting and fun to be doing things that didn't feel like they were paced quite right. They were coming more quickly, but yeah, I mean, if you want a show that goes 3 seasons or 5 seasons, you have to be very careful because, you know, if you burn that relationship out, then what do you have? You know, so you know.
I know you weren't involved with the last 4, but what was the impetus that made them rush to put them together so quickly in the 4 episodes? It's like, you know, the first 12, they're, you know, pushing and pulling each other,
right.
And then the last 4, it's like all, you know, throwing everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Why?
I'm not sure. I think, you know, like it's to me, it's like obviously you're watching the show, you want to see them get together,
Yeah.
but the fun is in not seeing them get together. You know, you give people exactly what they want, it becomes boring.
Like she said, throwing stuff at the TV when they, you know.
Right.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you need to have them together. You need, you know, but what's interesting is them wanting to be together and the obstacle that's keeping them apart. You know, and so I would have done that for longer, and you know, at some point, you know, put them together maybe for a period, and then torn them apart. And you know, ultimately, I mean, my my idea for, you know, the whole thing was at some point, we're gonna have to answer the question that arose in 11 when, you know, when she asked, you know, when she asked Mick, what would you have done if it were me? And he says the same thing, you know, but you know that it would not be the same. You know, so has different feelings about it, you know. And so, you know, something, you know, in my mind, at some point, something's, you know, like Beth was going to get some sort of disease, and then, you know, then they were really going to fall, and there's going to have to be a decision.